we're more bacteria than we're human.
Yeah.
But you really put sexy into dietetics, don't you?
You're so welcome.
Why is there no personalised probiotics? Is that not a thing yet?
On its own, as a sort of commercial tool, microbiome testing is fairly not very useful at this stage.
A lot more gut issues have happened post-COVID. So
Yeah.
what, is it COVID? Is it the fact that we ate too much because we were all home eating different things?
Yeah.
Is it the injections?
The leading intolerance test manufacturer or company, York Tests, have been
Yeah.
told by the ASA last year that they're no longer allowed to claim that they are an intolerance test because there's no scientific basis. The only way to diagnose a food intolerance is to go through an elimination type diet with a dietitian. You know, outside of healthcare, people talk about needing to do 10,000 hours to learn to be an expert in something, right? That the NHS, you can do that easily in a couple of years.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're never going to be an expert in anything. And why would people pay you money to come and see you?
Welcome to the Dietitian Bites Podcast with me, your host, Reshma. I'm a registered dietitian and personal performance coach. I'm the founder of the Dietitian in Harrods, providing private nutrition and coaching services worldwide. I'm passionate about optimizing health and mindset for success. Each episode is packed with practical tips, expert insights, and a healthy dose of fun. Join me on this journey towards a healthier, happier life. My guest today needs no introduction in the world of nutrition and gut health. She's a well-recognised consultant dietitian and the Director of City Dietitians, the Chair of the British Dietetic Association for London, a consultant in product development for the manufacture of vitamins and probiotics. She's recently been on Channel 4 discussing poo. Sophie Medlin, your background has taken up half of my podcast time. I welcome you to the Dietitian Bites.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So, one of the burning questions everyone has is, what made you leave the NHS and start your own thing? And not just the NHS, you went into academia and ended up leaving that as well.
Yeah. I basically am unmanageable at this stage of my career, is the truth, Reshma. So basically, I was working in the NHS. I loved the NHS. I loved my work in the NHS. I think it's an incredible place to learn your skills and your talent and build up your confidence and everything else. And I loved the team I was working in, but there wasn't any room for growth for me there. And for more sort of structural reasons within the department as opposed to anything else. Obviously we're always learning and I could always learn more. But in terms of career progression and growth, I was just stuck at the level that I was at because of people not leaving jobs and things within the NHS. So then I was offered a lecturing position, first part-time, then full-time. So I was then a full-time academic for 5 years, which again, I enjoyed, but wasn't necessarily for me. So during that time when I was working there, I found out that I've got dyslexia, dyspraxia, and ADHD. And I was thinking at that time, like, maybe I'm going to do my PhD. Maybe that's the route for me. And I'd started doing some media work. I'd always maintained a private practice during academia.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could torture myself for 5 years trying to do a PhD part-time, or I can do all these other things that I'm really good at anyway, and that I love and that are building for me. And I can't do both, and I can't put my energy into both. So let me do the things that I like and go down that route. So that's it, a short version of a very long story of why I quit both my employments and ended up working for myself.
Well, I get asked a lot what made me leave the NHS, and I loved it. And at the moment, I do a lot of mentoring for students. And the one thing they say to me is, we just want to start private practice and we don't want to be in the NHS. And I say to them, just try it.
Yeah.
Even give yourself a year or 2 years of NHS work. It's where you will learn everything at rapid speed.
Absolutely.
At the moment, I don't feel like I learn anything. I don't. Unless I do all my own reading, meet up with dietitians, do CPD, I'm not actually learning because I don't see any sick people.
Yeah.
And I genuinely miss that about the NHS. And I remember I actually went back to the NHS 2 years ago. So I left private practice to go back because I needed a job and I needed a steady source of income immediately. I was in the process of buying a home. And I went back as a PCN dietitian and I loved it. Yeah. I loved it. And then I realised, oh God, this is actually going to be really difficult to, work with guidelines and having to put things through people. Yeah. And I was like, actually, this doesn't feel fulfilling enough. And then I had to jump back out. But NHS for me is a very special place. Yeah, in that. Sure. That's where you start off, you really do learn dietetics. Totally. You put that textbook into practice. Yeah. And my fear today is, how would anyone do that if you just started private practice?
You can't. You haven't got anyone to support you. You haven't got anyone to supervise you. You can obviously pay for that, but it's nowhere near the same as being able to walk off the ward into the department and say, hey, I just saw this patient, I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah.
Equally in the NHS, especially I'm a colorectal specialist dietitian, right? It's quite niche. I didn't learn anything about that at university. So then the people who I learnt from were specialist nurses, consultants, pelvic physiotherapists, not from necessarily even from my dietetic colleagues, And if you don't have that multidisciplinary team around you, you're not going to multidisciplinary team meetings where you're looking at x-rays and scans and things, again, that you would never do at university as a dietitian, you cannot learn those skills. And I think I have this particular fear at the moment because gut health is so massive. All the student dietitians are saying, I just want to do what you do. And I'm like, I'm 15 years deep in this career. I've been doing it for a long time. And within, outside of healthcare, people talk about needing to do 10,000 hours to learn to be an expert in something, right? The NHS, you can do that easily. In a couple of years. If you don't, you're never going to be an expert in anything. And why would people pay you money to come and see you when they can see you've got no experience?
And I think outside of the NHS, the only thing you really can do properly for me is more weight management. That's what every dietitian wants to fall into. And I remember doing complex obesity at in the NHS. And I never used to give any advice. Like I literally used to sit there with psychologists and the doctors, part of an MDT, and they weren't really even talking to me. They weren't asking me for my advice because these patients have a lot of complexity when it comes to obesity and when it comes to weight management. They might be living their lives, working, doing all of that, but there's deep-rooted psychology, and I never appreciated that actually I don't have a space in that sometimes because they're trying to figure out what's going on with this person.
For sure.
And I now see that in private practice where, it's not about giving the advice. It's really about listening to that patient, thinking about, okay, what has led you to get here and how do we go backwards? And 9 out of 10 times I'm doing a referral back to psychologists.
Totally.
I'm not talking to them. And they're like, well, I just want to know what to eat. And I'm like,
if I told you wouldn't be able to do it.
It's not going to work. I've already figured it out. You don't need me now. You're going to come back maybe in 3 months' time and we're going to work together. But for now, I'm going to make this referral. And I don't know. I don't think I would have had the confidence to do that 15 years ago.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. I think if you are someone who's very junior in your practice and someone's paid you money to give them dietary advice, 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10 probably, you're going to give them that advice because you feel like you have to. Whereas you and I know, and I work in the colorectal space. A lot of the times it's not something I need to do for them. It's a medical problem. They need to have more tests. They need to go and see a colorectal surgeon. They need to see somebody else. They come to me, but often I'm referring them on. Often they need psychology as well. And so having the confidence to say, actually, you don't need me right now. This is what you do need. Takes a lot of strength, and it's not always easy. We don't always have the answers. And also within my clinic, I'm really lucky to be able to refer people on to other dietitians who are specialists in other things for second opinions. I referred someone for a second opinion yesterday because you just come to a point where you're like, we're not making any progress here. And I don't think that's because I don't know enough. I think it's because we've tried all my tools in my toolkit, right? I'm not always the right person for the job. But if I was a newly qualified dietitian, I would think I had to have all the tools.
Exactly.
Because you don't have the confidence to say, actually, I know as much as you could possibly know in this area, but I don't know everything. And that's okay.
So it's a tough place. So I guess the learning from this is I always encourage the new graduates to go back into the NHS for a couple of years and just figure out, even from a speciality point of view, what you want to do, because you can bring that into private practice. You can do consulting. But it's a difficult one now, especially as... I guess the funding for the dietetics degrees have changed. Like we were all funded and then we went back and gave back. And now it feels like, well, you're paying for it, so you don't need to go back into that environment.
And I think we make it look easy.
So tell me, how did City Dietitians come about?
So when I was lecturing at King's, as I say, and previously to that, I set up a private practice. I just wanted to keep seeing patients when I was lecturing because I loved it. And I was already doing specialist stuff with people who have stomas and things like that. So it had already been quite niche for me. And then my colleague, Dr. Nicola Guest, who worked at King's at the same time as me, we sort of said, like, I think we could do this together. We obviously had different sectors of the market. So she looked after lifestyle type stuff, weight management, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and I did all the kind of nutrition support type stuff and gut health stuff. So it was a partnership that worked quite well initially. And it was kind of born from there. And the truth is, I wouldn't have had the confidence to do it if I hadn't had Nicola by my side during that time. And the business has grown since then and changed, and Nicola's no longer part of the business, but she was certainly there for the genesis of it. And it was always my idea and my baby, but I just wouldn't have done it if I hadn't have had her pushing me, which I really appreciate.
I think I said to myself for 10 years, whilst working in the NHS and, you know, dipping in and out of private practice, I just want someone to start a business with me. I really want someone to start a business with me. And I remember reading lots of books, and it just said, well, if you're waiting for someone to save you, don't wait, because no one's coming.
No one's coming.
Like, no one's coming. I need to do this myself. And now I think to myself, I don't think I could ever have a business partner. I'm always like, I'll work with anyone, but we can't be business partners. We just work together. You do your thing, I do my thing. And, you know, I still don't want to have to get someone else's opinion in business anymore. And I finally got to that place after so long of, I don't want to work with anyone. I just want to work with myself, if that's okay. But you've built an amazing team.
Thank you.
That's what's happening with City Dietitian. So are you going to expand? Does it get bigger?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've got 12 dietitians now. So I think in terms of how I manage things, that's probably at capacity. There's not, you know, occasionally we'll get a referral for a renal patient, for example, and I think maybe we should have a renal dietitian on the team. But in reality, I think we're probably covering the biggest specialities that we can right now. And I mean, I'll always be tempted to grow the team, but I'm not sure that's the right thing. Actually, what I would really like to do is try to expand our reach kind of outside, so geographically more than anything. So at the moment we are pretty London-centric, certainly from a website perspective and things. But I think we could expand that reach and possibly even expand into other countries.
Really
so,
good.
yeah, I guess there's a bit of a loose 3-year plan in the back of my head around that kind of stuff. But it will take some support from other people because I don't have the skills for some of that stuff. And that's, you know, where you have to get advice and consultants in. Another area I would love to expand is that we offer quite a lot of pay what you can appointments for people, which I'm really proud of. And it really helps, I think, during these times when the NHS is under so much pressure. So in an ideal world, I'd like to have a sort of charity arm of the business where people can be seen for free and people donate appointments, and hopefully we can fund things that way in a different kind of way would be a big dream of mine. And I am aware that running a charity is a big job. So again, I'm going to need a project manager or something similar, but that's kind of where my head's at in terms of expansion of that business at the moment.
I love the idea of that. I mean, to be able to give such a premium service at a lower rate to people that really do need it. And I think, you know, when it comes to things like weight management, I'm like, the information is out there. And if you follow the right people and ask the right questions, you'll get what you're looking for. You're not going to get the same if you have chronic IBS or if you have a stoma, for example. You know, they're beautiful charities and really good work is going on, but actually you want to speak to that person and tell them exactly what's going on with your body. And there's nothing out there. So I think that's phenomenal that you are doing it. And I love that part of your business.
Me too.
So what's challenging about running a business? I can give you a whole list of things. Like every day I'm faced with challenges, and sometimes I dread opening up my emails, especially if it's my accountant.
So
oh God, no, I don't understand. The numbers look great. I don't know what you're talking about. How do you deal with the challenges of having a business?
I mean, I have got 4 businesses on the go at the moment. So juggling is a big part of what I have to do all the time, and I love it. And my brain works well when I'm jumping from one thing to the next thing to the other thing. But I think for me, and this is maybe good advice for more junior people as well, is everything that I do has this kind of pillar through the middle of it, which is around gut health and around what I'm really passionate about. So even if I'm designing probiotics, but that's for this, I'm designing these things for stress management, that's for this, and it all feeds into that same central pillar. Clinic work, Instagram work, media work, everything is feeding into the same central pillar and feeding all of the businesses in a really nice kind of ecosystem. So it's not like I come to something like this and think, oh God, she's going to ask me questions that I don't know the answer to clinically, or you know, I'm very rarely clinically challenged, touch wood. But in terms of understanding business, how things work, how to expand, all that kind of stuff, and just generally, I mean, since the TV show, my workload is ridiculous. You always think you're busy, and then suddenly you're under more pressure than you've ever been. And I'm super grateful for it. The opportunities are amazing. Clinics booked until the end of June. crazy.
Yeah.
But it's high pressure at the
Yes.
moment, and it's intense. And I think it's about self-care. Got the dog who makes me walk every day and keeps me centered and all that kind of stuff. But it's not easy. I'm not going to lie. It's a high pressure time.
It is. Yeah. How do you stay motivated? Do you have no choice but to stay motivated? Because you've got stuff to do.
Yeah, obviously. But I love everything that I do. Like everything that I do, I love. And I'm so lucky for that. There's nothing that, well, I hate admin, but like everything else, I just love doing. So any exciting opportunities or anything like I'm just always super motivated for anything. So yeah, I'm really lucky in that sense.
I'm so in awe of the fact that you have managed to bring 2 products onto the market. And I think I feel that, oh my God, this is amazing because you're a dietitian. So anyone can bring a product out in my eyes, you know. But when a dietitian does it, it makes it really special because it's something we haven't experienced. We don't have dietitians bringing products out. I think it's quite controversial.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, we're always food first and here we are talking about supplements. But I personally take Heights.
That's great.
Because I have a thing about my brain health and, you know, you end up doing things where there's an emotional link to them. So for me, I have a strong history of mental health in my family. So for me, I'm like, I need to protect my brain. And if a dietitian's made a product, I'm on it.
Yeah.
Tell me how this happened. How did you end up thinking about doing brain care? Probiotics, I knew at some point you would figure it out. But brain care is amazing to think about.
Thank you. Yeah, so the founders of Heights, Dan and Joel, approached me. I think it was when I was still working at King's, so it's going to be about 7 years ago now. And at that time, they were having some ideas about, it was the sort of time where Silicon Valley was all about nootropics and like things that you could use, like hacking your brain health, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, guys, no one's doing a really good foundational multivitamin for brain health. Like, no, we need to lay the foundations of this market before we start talking about, I don't know, helping you with focus and concentration and that kind of immediate action type stuff, which nootropics are kind of more known for, right? So that's where we had the conversation, and it wasn't easy because they had some other people on board at that time in terms of advisors who had very different ideas about things to me, and were going, well, just put a little bit of this in and a little bit of that in, and then you can tick this box, and that would say that you can do this, and then you can make these claims. And I was like, you can go in that direction if you want to, but it's not evidence-based and it's not something I can put my name to. It's your business, it's your decision. If you want to go down that route, fine. If you want to be evidence-based and scientifically backed, this is what I would recommend. And luckily they came along, and that was great. And it's been, I mean, I love working with them. I've learned so much on that journey. We're all learning together because none of us had brought out a supplement product before.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best things that I do working for them. I love it. And luckily, there's, you know, a few other products on the go coming out shortly. We've got my very own product coming out hopefully by the end of the week even. So yeah, it's mad. It's been a mad time, and but it's really exciting, and it's a part of my work that I love and I'm really proud of. And I think the thing that dietitians sometimes need to remember is that if I wasn't doing it, somebody else would be doing it and doing it really badly. And so where there is this controversy, I've been asked to speak at a kind of spiritual festival in May, and I think that would be a space where dietitians would be like, why are you going and like doing that? But actually, if I don't do it, it's going to be someone who is on the kind of much more alternative therapy side of things, and it's going to be saying dangerous things. And actually, if I can be there, great.
I think this is where dietetics comes out of its remit. And, you know, we almost need to evolve a little bit because we talk about this gut-brain axis, and we're always banging on about self-care, and actually you can trigger your own IBS if you are stressed, and if you're in an environment where your cortisol levels are forever high, you know, it's always shocking that then when a dietitian does go into a space to do something like that, everyone's like, what are you doing in there? And when I'm in Harrods, I have a sound healing specialist that works with us. And sometimes I have to tell my clients, I'm like, well, you're here. Why don't you just go and do a session with her and just see how you feel? Because at this moment in time, what you need to do is reduce your stress levels. You know, you're not losing weight, you're eating right, you're exercising. So we change the exercise plan and we have a sound healing session.
Amazing. Yeah.
And it's part of the package. I'm like, you know, just try it.
Yeah.
And for anyone that has bowel issues and gut problems, I'm just like, do a bit of yoga, do mindfulness, be present in these moments.
Yeah.
And you might actually see in a few weeks that things are getting better.
Definitely.
So I do think that with dietetics, we do need to come out of that space a little bit.
I think so.
Just be open to it.
Yeah.
Try it out.
For sure. We give all of our IBS patients a booklet that's got meditation, gut-directed hypnotherapy, yoga, mindfulness techniques in it. And it's just a signposting thing. It's just to go, you know, some of these things might resonate with you and work for you. It's not just about what you're eating. It's also about your stress and your anxiety and your gut-brain axis.
Yeah.
And like you say, we can... As a profession, be quite pigeonholed, stick our noses up at things. And actually, if it's what people need, I'm here for it.
It's definitely. I still struggle with the concept of everyone who has any sort of like, oh, but I've got constipation, I've got diarrhea, and I get IBS, it's definitely yogurt. And I'm like, I used to prescribe this in the NHS. I used to put it on the chart of they've got diarrhea, just give them some yogurt.
Yeah.
Have we come so far away from these messages, like so far away from them? And sometimes I get it, you know, research changes and studies show something different, so we can move away. But I'm like, this is so wrong. Like, where do you get this stuff from? Because we're still giving yogurt in the NHS. And
it's social media though, isn't it? It's chaos. Yeah,
it's chaos. So back to these beautiful supplements. I'm so excited. I had no idea you're bringing out a product.
Yeah. So it's been a long time, sort of 2.5 years in the making, something that's been in my head for about 15 years. So so about 15 years ago when I was working in the NHS, have you heard of St. Mark's solution?
No.
So St. Mark's solution is something that you give people who've got high output stomas or a new ileostomy because it's too liquidy. So you give them this rehydration solution, but it tastes awful. It's unpalatable. And as a result, people end up having to have IV fluids because they can't drink this drink. They have to take diorolite, which is not the right formulation for them. It's got too much potassium and that causes more problems. Or they're trying to drink sports drinks, which are really expensive and actually don't do the job properly. So 15 years ago, I'm working in NHS and I'm like, why has someone not put St. Mark's solution into a packet and made it palatable for people? And 15 years later, teamed up with an amazing influencer in the stoma space called Mr. Colitis Crohn's, Misha.
I do know them, yep.
So Misha's got millions of followers and already has products, and our colleague Greg is amazing in distribution and manufacture. So we teamed up as a team of 3 and we've brought, it's called Hydrostomate, as in hydrating ostomates, to the market. I'm super excited about it. It's basically St. Mark's solution, but it tastes really good. So it's perfect for people who live with an ileostomy, particularly, but anyone who's got colitis or IBD and things like that. So I'm very, very happy about it, and it's been a real labour of love and a big investment actually, but it's here.
I can't believe it. These are the moments that we simply live for.
Oh, it was like having a baby. Yeah. When I saw the product delivered, I was in my office crying. Yeah. You know, you wait and the manufacturer says it's going to be another week, blah, blah, blah. And then when I saw it all in the lorry and it was there in packaging, all the things we'd planned, big tears in the office.
Will be a game changer for so many patients.
That's the thing.
And if we can roll things out into the NHS,
exactly,
you know, it makes a difference to life. And
100%.
I've seen supplements come so far, just nutritional supplements. If you look at the most obvious brands with big companies, I always used to think, how do you get away with making something so disgusting?
Yeah.
Just because they need it. Yeah. But these people live off it for quite a few months to years. It's not palatable. And I think we've come so far in making amazing supplements. So to have a product like that, I'm super excited to see where this ends.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it.
So just on that note, I would like to ask you about probiotics. Mm-hmm. Why is there no personalised probiotics? Is that not a thing yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're fairly close to being able to do that. And certainly from the perspective of targeted probiotics, I think we're there. So in terms of saying, this is the problem that I've got, I'm constipated, I've got diarrhea, I've got bloating. Okay, here are some of the best evidence species that we know. For example, yesterday I had a patient in clinic who really wants to reintroduce lactose. Yep. Well, there are 2 amazing strains that have got data for how to that support you in reintroducing lactose and help you with lactose digestion in the gut. So great, let's get you on a probiotic that includes those. The problem that we'll have is that it is possible to create your own dysbiosis by just taking narrow strains. Yeah. So my feeling would be that the personalised or the targeted probiotic market will go, if someone came to see me for that or I was designing them, I would say, okay, what's your immediate problem? Yeah. Let's get you on this one to start with, and then a broad spectrum once we think that's worked. So we've redressed the balance. And we're doing more and more microbiome testing and understanding, but on its own as a sort of commercial tool, microbiome testing is fairly not very useful at this stage. So we're getting there. I would give that probably 2 years, and I think we'll be ready for that stuff.
So watch this space.
Yeah,
he's going to bring out some probiotics next, I'm sure.
Probiotics are an absolute nightmare to make.
How does one take a probiotic?
Yeah, so I think some companies are very strict about when you should take them, when you shouldn't take them. And actually, in general, with any supplements, take them when it's convenient for you and when it works. Okay. Ideally, we think to take a probiotic on an empty stomach is a good idea. When you're in the fasted state, your stomach acid is slightly lower. It gives the bacteria a bit of a better chance to survive. But that doesn't mean that it's first thing in the morning, oh no, I've forgotten to take it, I might as well not bother. Take it when you remember. And some people will need to empty the capsules out, and that's also fine.
Yep.
It's kind of about making it work for you and it being practical and accessible. And the really important thing with probiotics to remember is it doesn't matter how much bacteria you put in the top end. If you're not feeding them, they're gonna die.
How do you feed a bacteria?
With prebiotic fibre. Eat loads of plants. Usual dietitian advice. Eat loads of plants. No secret to it. Stuff your mum would have told you to do.
Yeah. Okay. So there are people that don't do this, believe it or not, because they want to fast. They want to live off supplements.
Yep. They're on a carnivore diet.
Yeah, I don't have many of those at the moment.
Thank God.
But that's because I don't have any males.
Sure.
I predominantly look after females at the moment.
I think we all are. Since the show, I've seen lots more men, but I think that mainly women access dietetic services.
Yeah. No offence to ladies, but I do prefer to work with men. I get better results.
Yeah.
My stats look great when I have men.
Yeah, I think that is because men have historically in particular, have had a much less complex relationship with food than women have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas for women, food and body shape and size is so caught up with our self-esteem and how we feel and our value. Absolutely. Whereas for men, it's like, oh, I've put on a bit of weight, let me just cut back a bit and I've lost the weight, magic, let's go.
In my whole career, I've noticed one thing. Never tell someone not to eat something. Sure. Even if it's an IBS client. Yeah. Don't eat the garlic. No, don't tell them that because they will just go and do it. They will do it, prove to me that, okay, I've eaten it and it doesn't work. And I'm like, I told you, but I'm now no longer telling anyone what not to eat because they go and do it. I feel like when I tell my male clients what not to have or to limit, they're to the T. They'll do it and they'll be like, oh yeah, you know what? I don't even need it. I don't even think about it. It's fine.
The patriarchy must be a really nice thing to exist within, right? As a man.
So it's a big thing, but unfortunately Harrods we don't have a good footfall of male clients. So that would be my next thing.
Definitely. I wonder how you market to them.
This is it. I guess when we do marketing and branding and all of that, we're always told stick to your niche and think about the clients that are already coming through and work with those. But I'm like, yeah, I love those. And they're always going to come through the door. They're women. You know, everyone wants to think about weight of at some point in their lives, weight comes up. For me, it's come up numerous times, especially around having children. Sure, so before, after, even in the middle. And it will definitely come up again when I go through the menopause. No doubt when I start changing my shape, I'm like, what's going on? How do I control it? Yeah. But I would really I think for me personally, I don't necessarily do what the market wants or things like that. I'm like, I do what I want, which is usually if I want to work with men, I'm going to go and find them and figure it out.
I wonder what would happen if you put a male associate dietitian in with you in Harrods and whether that would attract more men.
Quite possibly. It's just access to services. I feel like men don't necessarily think about it and it's always come from a woman. So when I have had male clients, it's the wives, the girlfriends, or they've booked in.
Yeah.
Which is a bit more difficult.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about COVID for a little while, only because I feel, and this is what I've seen in my clinic, that a lot more gut issues have happened post-COVID. So what, is it COVID? Is it the fact that we ate too much because we were all home eating different things? Yeah. Is it the injections? What led the change in gut health post-COVID?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a combination of all of those things. So we had like a COVID constipation wave because people were in their homes, they were not eating as well, they weren't moving around.
Yep.
And so that led to lots and lots of people being constipated. The stress and anxiety of the pandemic created a lot of IBS problems for people, which we'll start to see now really. So if you think about a stress-related, what I might call a stress-related microbiome injury, that would start to happen at the beginning of the pandemic and then actually have properly developed into real symptoms kind of, I guess, a year or so ago. People started really coming forward with that kind of stuff that you would definitely put down to that. Yeah. But we've also had this interesting problem with histamine intolerance and mast cell activation from COVID, the virus itself. So we're seeing lots of patients come forward with symptoms that previously we might have thought were IBS. And now when we actually look at them, it's histamine intolerance and they're responding really well to a low histamine diet. That doesn't mean that there's good and convenient treatment for that, or even a pathway in the NHS to manage that, which is really tricky. But at least we can get people's symptoms under control. And they say to me, will it get better? And I say, nobody knows. And that's really unhelpful, actually. But at least we can get their symptoms better.
How do we test this?
So you can go to an immunologist and have these things tested via blood tests and see what's going on. But from a dietary perspective, you do 2 weeks on a low histamine diet, and if you respond, we can say that that's part of the problem. I would always refer my patients after that to the immunologist that we work with, who diagnoses these things properly, because they can put them on prescription level antihistamines, and that means that they won't have to restrict their diet in the same way forever, which is so important.
Yeah. I think, so personally, I've struggled with antibiotics post-COVID. So I've had 3 rounds of antibiotics for different things.
Sure.
You know, one was like a UTI, and I keep getting sinusitis. And just looking at my own diet, I think, you know, I eat well, I work out, you know, everything. I'll tick all the obvious boxes, probably not the self-care one all the time. But most of the food and nutrition ones will get ticked automatically.
Sure.
'Cause you live and breathe it. I was surprised that I had 3 rounds of antibiotics at 3 different points, having had children and in 10 years never taken antibiotics.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm like, something definitely changed.
Yeah.
And you can almost then, when you listen to people and they're telling you, you do empathize. You're like, okay, I do believe something changed.
Definitely.
I don't necessarily know what it is. And I feel like this is a bit out of my remit, where I'm like, I don't know what changed because I don't know it for myself. So it's hard for me to say why you keep getting unwell. And the answer isn't, let me change your diet and get you on this, you know, let me help your immune system. I'll be doing that, but I don't actually think it's going to marry back to, you're not going to get ill, you're still going to get ill.
Yeah, we've all definitely developed more vulnerabilities, haven't we? I think it's difficult to pinpoint it down to anything, but as you say, it's certainly you're not alone in that experience. There's lots and lots of people coming forward with similar things, and I think it'll all come out in the next 5 years or so.
Fingers crossed. Either that, or we have another round of like being housebound.
Let's not think about that.
So what about intolerance tests? So this is a question we always get asked. I get asked all the time. People bring all sorts of tests to clinic with. You know, I look at them and I'm like, no, I don't think that's a real test. And they've already eliminated everything from their diet. So actually they're coming to me and we're doing reintroductions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see how it goes with putting gluten back in and putting your lactose back in. And a lot of what I do is tell them everything that they're actually going to be deficient in if they carry on.
Yeah.
And give them an actual diet of, this is how you have to eat if you want to eat this way, because I'm not here to stop you from doing what you think works, but you then you have to do these 10 things and go on to supplements. Is there a test? I know for lactose it's clear cut, but have we got any other tests that we can now recommend or tell people actually we get some sort of clarity?
No, unfortunately not. So people would really like that. But the leading sort of intolerance test manufacturer or company, York Tests, have been told by the ASA last year, so the Advertising Standards Authority, that they're no longer allowed to claim that they are an intolerance test because there's no scientific basis behind those IgG tests. And what happens is all the foods that you normally eat, you'll be told you're intolerant to, because we all have a small reaction to those foods. It's completely biologically normal. So people doing those tests, including the hair ones and all the other kinds of ones like that, they're all showing you a completely normal biological reaction to food, but the company is just selling it to you to frighten you and to make you take it. And of course, if you're having symptoms and you're told to cut out all of your normal foods, probably some of those foods were causing your symptoms, but not all of them, and not because of what's going on in your bloodstream. I had a patient last week who was really cross that she'd paid, you know, very intelligent people. She'd paid for an intolerance test via York Tests because she trusted them. Then I said, look, actually, this has happened. It's not legal for them to say that. But on their website, they just have a tiny little asterisk that says, this is that you can't be used to diagnose. And she did get her money back, but it is, you know, they continue to market. If you Google intolerance tests, they'll still come up first. It's not legal.
I mean, so many tests come up. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And some of them are really cheap and some of them are really expensive. And it just so happens that the clients I look after have gone for like £1,000 plus testing. And I look at these results and they're like, no, but how can you tell me to eat something that quite clearly is red on this? And I'm like,
it's not real.
It's an invalid test. But I mean, you can tried to eat it and they've had no change from before and after. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just put it back in? It's not changed anything.
There's a thing about things being reassuringly expensive, right? So people believe that the more you spend sometimes, the more correct things are going to be. Yeah. And the companies look super slick and they'll double down and they'll say, this is correct. And it's just lies. It's misleading people. Yeah. And at its worst, it creates really horrendous disordered eating and eating disorders. Yeah. And that obviously makes me super angry. Yeah. The only way to diagnose a food intolerance is to go through an elimination type diet with a dietitian. Yes. That's the only evidence-based way of doing it. And it's not the answer people want because it takes a bit of time and effort, but it's far cheaper than an intolerance test. So crack on and get it done.
And we'll try and figure something out. So I heard you say something, I don't know if I heard it or if I read it, but you said something along the lines that we're more bacteria than we're human. Yeah. But you really put sexy into dietetics, don't you?
You're so welcome.
So we're walking bacteria.
Yeah, basically. So sometimes you'll read stats that will say it's 10-1. Some people will say it's 4-1. So, but certainly in terms of if we divided cell for cell, we are more bacteria than we are human.
Wow. Yeah. So it makes sense to take more bacteria into...
I know, yeah. And I think if we think about the environments that we exist in now, if you even look back, let's say 50 years, 60 years, people would have still been growing their own vegetables a lot. They would have been very much more connected with the land. People would have lived with animals more, all that kind of stuff. People lived rural lives a bit more. Certainly wasn't alcohol, hand gel or antibacterial, everything all around. The antibiotic revolution hadn't really kind of kicked off in the same way that it has or had for our generation in particular. Yeah. So we were much more in touch with bacteria, and the reason that we struggle so much now with gut health issues and other health issues is largely and certainly contributed to by the fact that we are no longer in touch with bacteria. We've killed off a load of species of bacteria that used to be commensal, so we used to have a lot of them in our bodies all the time. Yeah. We're just not exposed to them anymore, so they're not around, and that's having a huge impact on our health for sure.
And another fun fact that's come from Sophie's mouth is along the lines of our gut bacteria changes depending on kind of who we live with.
Yeah.
So I guess now the dating profile should be kind of tall, dark, handsome, obviously.
Constipated.
I was going to say really good gut health, disclaimer, kind of poo sample might be required. But
I feel like if you match someone who had constipation and someone who had diarrhea, predominant IBS, and made them live together, maybe they'd be all right.
And how does this work with animals? Because you've got this glorious
I've got
baby
a small horse with me.
Yeah. Do animals change our gut bacteria?
Yeah, animals are great for our gut bacteria. Yeah. In terms of diversity. No, apparently cats are too.
Okay.
So I thought that cats had some dangerous stuff. I certainly think cat poo can cause some problems. But in general, all animals are good for our gut bacteria.
I mean, they're definitely good for our mental health. But I love the fact that they're now good for gut bacteria as well.
I know. Practicing what I preach.
Add that to the list of why we should buy animals.
Absolutely.
I come across lots of treatments, lots of fat loss, fat burning, and I'm all for it. For me, like you said, if they don't do it in one place, they'll do it in another place. So for me, it's the safety, the efficacy. It's what are you actually telling the client that they're going to get out of this. But in my workspace, if anyone's doing any fat loss treatment, I will always question them and be like, so what is your diet and what is your lifestyle? What is everything like in the background for you to come and do this? Because you're not going to get the results. You're certainly not going to sustain any results if you continue to eat the way you do, or you're not doing exercise, but you think getting on a machine will help.
Sure.
One of the things that I have seen in clinic, and it's becoming a lot more obvious, is people doing colon cleanses because it's available.
Sure.
And there are lots of, high-end clinics that offer this service. Now, I don't know, and I don't look at the risks of this, but maybe you can tell me, are there any risks of doing it?
Yeah, so I think the reason, if people are doing it because they've got gut symptoms, they're going somewhere when someone's not going to be checking if they're at risk of a perforation, for example. So the reason that you've got gut symptoms could be a multitude of things, but at the worst of that is that you've got something like really fractious diverticular disease that's causing structural problems to your bowel. The worst of it is you've got a tumour that's there that no one can see from the outside, and when they're putting that tube up your bum to do the colon cleanse, they can't see that. That's causing structural changes. So if you think that one of the reasons that people might be there is for these gut symptoms, they potentially have structural problems with their gut that no one's screening them for before they stick a tube up their bum and flush a load of water up there. putting the colon under more pressure, disrupting the microbiome, and potentially delaying that person from getting the treatment that they need and the diagnosis that they need. So I'm really anti colonic irrigation and colonic cleanses because we know there's loads of potential harm, but absolutely no evidence for any benefits whatsoever.
Not even one?
No.
Apart from just getting all your poo sucked out of you.
Yeah, basically. People feel like they've got a flatter tummy afterwards, right? And that's really what they're going for.
I guess so, yeah. And what about water loss and things like that? Is it dangerous? Like, would it lead to dehydration?
Yeah, so in theory, what will happen is some of your electrolytes will be sucked into the water that's there because of osmosis. Then you'll lose some electrolytes. Then you can feel like maybe you'll get a bit less water retention for a couple of days because your overall sodium level in your body's lower. But actually, that's not good for you. That's not something that's going to give you any benefits at all. So yeah, literally nothing good there.
I think there are lots of treatments like that where you feel amazing after, but
IV vitamins.
Effect. Yeah. IV is definitely one of them. I used to take a lot of IV when I was pregnant. So I had severe hyperemesis and I used to go in on a Friday, check myself out on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, halfway through that IV infusion, I used to take pictures of myself.
Bet you felt amazing.
I'm like, I look great. I feel great. I look great. Yeah. This is the time to probably go clubbing. And I would just have a great night out. And I text my friends and they're like, you're 7 months pregnant. Like, I don't think you should be going out, or I don't really think that's the environment. I'm like, but I've never looked so good. I look so good. And I guess when you shove 2 litres of fluid into a system, you are going to feel plumped. You are going to look glowing, but you're also going to feel great because you have that. And I guess you don't feel the same way if you were just to drink 2 litres,
No, for sure.
It is different. But again, for me, the risks and the longevity of this and what you're doing and the amount of money you're spending is always questionable.
For sure.
Always,
our gut's got very careful mechanisms for making sure that we don't get too much of anything into our bloodstream. Like that's basically its job. Yeah. So if you took a load of vitamin C, you'd chuck it very quickly out the other end. You'd poo it out very quickly because you don't want to flood your blood with vitamin C. But you can go into a shopping centre and have a load of vitamin C shoved into your bloodstream, bypassing all of your biological mechanisms for making sure it's not at too high levels in your bloodstream. Yeah. And that's dangerous. There's risks involved. I reckon the reason you felt so good was because you were chronically dehydrated all week. Definitely. And then suddenly you were hydrated. Yeah. It's like when you go and have one, if people have a hangover and they go, you must feel so much better.
You do. You immediately feel better. And I was also having antiemetics IV, which felt great. This is great. I could sustain a pregnancy if you just kept me on this IV drip everywhere I went. Sure. And I worked at the Royal Free at the time. So I was like, don't take the cannula out. I'm all right. I'm not going to be naughty. I won't stick anything in me. Just leave it. And they looked at me like, no, we'll be shut down. Like, you can't just walk around with your cannula in. So don't keep putting it in. It's really,
I can imagine.
It's painful. And so, but IV is another thing, which obviously a lot of my clients will be very happy to go and get.
Yeah.
So what can we do? If we were to give top tips to our listeners today, what are the 3 things maybe they can do to really improve their gut health? And I'm saying take it to the next level, not just eat plant-based. Sure. What are the top end things we can do, like supplements?
Yeah. So I would look at your diet to start with and go, okay, are you eating at least 3 plants with each of your meals? And I'm talking about making sure you're having like seeds on your porridge in the morning and then adding some extra fruit in there as well. Maybe having some dried fruit and nuts as a snack, making sure you're having at least 3 different plants at lunchtime, 3 different plants in the evening. Most people are like having a sandwich at lunchtime. It might have a little bit of limp lettuce in it, but it's not doing the job properly, right? So we really need to fortify that diet, but not just with fruits and vegetables, also with nuts and seeds and like various different whole grains. In this country, we've got a real dependence on rice, oats and wheat. Yep. And actually there are so many other grains, and we know that diversity of grains is associated with much better gut bacteria diversity, which has all the better health outcomes. So diversity of grains in our diet is super, super important. Then I would be looking at, okay, what do you want to target in terms of your gut health and what you're looking for? So is it that you're feeling bloated? Is it that you're constipated? What would you like to achieve from taking a probiotic, and which one is going to be best for you, given the things that you're trying to target? And then if needed, we can use prebiotic supplements and things like that. And sometimes we might even use something called butyrate, which is called a postbiotic.
Wow.
So it's one of the things that bacteria produce itself. It was very heavily associated with the COVID cascade of inflammation and things like that. So we can use that to feed gut bacteria while your gut bacteria are being trained to make their own more butyrate and feeding the new guys. But there's lots of things that we can do in terms of kind of refinement. And it's very personalised, you know. I also do a lot of maybe less processed meat because you're having ham every lunchtime, those kinds of things. Stress management, drinking enough water, not having too much alcohol, all those boring things as well. But it's mostly about chucking things in to make things better.
And what about fermented foods? I mean, we've always had yogurt, which we make at home.
Yeah.
So my mum's always made yogurt with live cultures and it feels normal. But now when I look at people making everything in jars, I'm like, I'm not sure about that. If you gave me a jar, I'd eat it. If I had to make it, I'm probably like, I've been watching this thing for a few weeks now and I'm not too keen on eating it. Do we need to have fermented foods?
Yes, I think there's been a nice research paper from King's showing that actually kefir is pretty much the only thing that reliably delivers any good bacteria to your colon when you're having it. And we think that's because the milk proteins help to wrap up the kefir, like the good bacteria in there, allowing it to transport through our digestive system and into the colon. That doesn't mean, you know, it's really worth remembering that we have a microbiome in our mouth and in our esophagus and in our sinuses and all these other places. So actually, just because those beneficial bacteria don't get to our colon doesn't mean they're not having benefits elsewhere in our system. So in that sense, it's always worth adding fermented foods into the diet, especially if you enjoy them. I don't want to force people to eat gherkins if they don't like them.
Like I said, I'm good with them on my plate as long as I haven't fermented my own food. So we've not got that
yet. I do have, this is a bit controversial, but I do have some slight concerns about people fermenting their own food at home because, you know, what bacteria is getting in there from your kitchen counter and from your hands? I think we've got to be a little bit careful about that.
Yeah, we need a sterile environment. And what happens if it goes wrong?
I mean, I guess people say that they know because it tastes disgusting or it smells awful.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. That is definitely.
I'm clearly giving away the fact that I'm not fermenting.
You're not
things
fermenting. I figured. I was like, she's with me. She's not fermenting anything.
She's not fermenting anything.
Well, before we end, I wanted to ask you something that's quite personal, but also I think really important for dietitians and the world of social media. So I know you got into trouble for posting something. So we're part of the HCPC, so the Healthcare Professions Council, and this is the body essentially that governs everything that we do and makes sure that we're working ethically with code of conduct and practice, and we can get stripped of being dietitians if we are misbehaving. And you got into trouble for, well, I would say misbehaving, but you can tell me if you're misbehaving. What did you get up to, Sophie, to get yourself all the way into trouble?
Yeah, so actually, I wasn't in trouble. This is a funny thing. So a journalist saw the work that I was doing with heights, and that I was talking about it on my socials and reported me to the HCPC. And basically the post said along the lines of, I'm really proud of what we've done. We've brought this product to the market. I'm really happy about it, blah, blah, blah. I hadn't put #ad because our understanding, this is probably about 5 years ago. So our understanding of what constituted an ad at that time was quite different. I wasn't technically promoting the product. I wasn't giving you a discount code. I wasn't saying go and buy it. I was just saying, this is a project I've been involved in and I'm really proud of it. And a journalist reported me as part of that. And there was a lot of other dietitians reported around that time as well. And the HCPC looked at it and said, you've not done anything wrong, just make sure you're putting #ad on everything. But what happens in that process is that you're sent an email that says you're under investigation for, what was it? Something that sounds really, really serious and horrible. And it's like the terminology of it is awful and it makes you really scared. And, you know, it's not easy to experience that process. And even though you can go, I know I'm not done anything wrong. I know I'm not going to lose my license over this. I know that this is not going to be something that is going to end up being career defining for me. You know, it's still not an easy thing to go through. And, you know, I've been single for a long time. I was single during that time. So not having that kind of person at home to reassure you around that stuff is really tough. So I mean, I think that it's so important that we have the HCPC and that we are accountable for our actions and the things that we do. But I do also see vindictive people reporting dietitians and other people for things because they think, I can, you know, get them in trouble and I can get them
the
teach
thing
them a
is,
lesson.
we can get into trouble, which is the problem with the profession. And I won't say it's a problem, but the fact that we can get into trouble stops us from doing a lot. And I don't see, unregistered nutritionists getting into any sort of trouble because there's no way for them to actually get into trouble.
No, for sure.
So just for our listeners, do they have to, if you're promoting something as a dietitian, do you have to say it's an ad?
Yeah. So now anytime I'm talking about heights, any of my other products, anything like that, I'll say #ad and I'll be clear about what I'm doing. So for example, I'm not someone who's on there saying, go and buy this. That will never be my vibe. And I'll never do ads for companies I'm not involved with and actually working for day to day. It's just not what I want to do. It's not the work that I want to pick up. But so, for example, if I'm promoting a webinar that I'm doing for Heights, I'll say #ad, I work for Heights, I design the products, blah, 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 blah. Just trying to be super, super clear about things and transparent with my audience, which is important to me because I want my social media to be a place for education, not for selling mattresses, hair care, blah, 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 blah. It's just not what I want to be doing on there. And honestly, anyone else can take the money. I don't care. Do what you want to do. But for me, that's not the position I want to be in.
Do you worry about posting?
Not
Do you think
really.
twice?
I'll certainly think twice. Yeah, I certainly think about the things that I'm doing. And the companies I work for will often be like, can you share this? Can you do this? Can we use your face for this, this and this? And I often have to say no.
Yeah.
Often I'll get sent through scripts for videos that people want me to record. And I have to say, I can't say that. I'm really sorry. I'm not allowed to say these things because you can't have a healthcare professional and a health claim about a product next to each other.
Yeah.
Lots of other people do it and they don't seem to care and they seem to get away with it. But partly because I've had my knuckles wrapped already, but also because I just want to be on the right side of everything. I don't want to be someone who's, you've got to be careful in this world. And I'm conscious that I am skating on the edge of what people consider to be acceptable for dietitians already.
Yeah. So I guess I would look at you and I'm like, well, Sophie's doing it. It's all right for me.
Yeah.
She knows what she's going to get away with. So.
And you know what? I've got loads of dietitians in my DMs all the time going, is this all right? Is this okay? And in my WhatsApp. And I'm really happy to say what I think and where I think we are with things. I think, as we've said a few times, if we don't do it, other people are going to do it and they're going to do it badly and dangerously. So, we might as well occupy the spaces that we've not occupied before.
So you're one of the few dietitians I would go to and approach and ask for help, ask for advice and refer clients to.
That's so nice.
And one of the reasons is because you've always been so open to give your time, give your advice and I guess help grow this profession. And not a lot of people would do that because so many people are scared of actually my client might disappear to that person or I don't want to help. What makes you actually help? Why are you doing that?
So I very much had the ladder taken away by people who climbed up ahead of me, right? Mm-hmm. I think as a profession, we have historically been very grabby about our space and our territory. And because we have this mindset potentially that there's only one seat at the table for a dietitian. Yep. So I'm going to take that seat and I better not let anyone come and try and take that seat. Whereas I prefer to think, do you know what, if we all go up there, there's going to be loads of seats at the table. So let's all go up together. And for me, and it's the same with the guys who work for me in clinic, I'll always say to them, come and work for me for a bit, but I want you to learn how to do this because you can go and do it yourself. You don't need me to do this. I'm going to make it as cushy as possible so you don't want to go off and do it yourself. Yeah. But at the same time, come and learn and pick up what you want because you are fully capable of doing this on your own. And it's the same for anybody else in the dietetic space. It's like, if we all come up together, any dietitian doing well means that there's dietitian is in the mouths of people see them doing well, people see them improving. And if we can support people with that, then we all win. But that's not been the mindset of dietitians historically. And for a lot of dietitians, it still won't be. But that's certainly the way that I want the profession to move.
I've been really careful on who I've worked with and more so when it comes to a dietitian, I don't question it. I'm like, you're a dietitian, you've got the title, I get it. When it's a nutritionist, I'm really careful. Yeah, of course. And I have a lot of my clients will see a nutritionist because it's the most easy. You Google it, it's there. It's who you'll come up with lots of good nutritionists, and they've really messed up. Really messed up, and you're now having to fix people's mess. And that's the thing that I cannot stand. So whenever I have any nutritionists DM me, can I get work experience? And even if it's just work experience, I'm like, could you just go back and do 3 more years at university? Yeah. Because this course that you did, I looked into it and you're not going to be able to actually survive and build a business on this. But if you want to go down the influencing route, you probably come out with something good, but I can't do that. And even for me, a lot of my clients are like, well, you're not really on social media. And I'm like, no, but neither are my clients, to be honest. Like, they're really busy and they're at work and they might be on LinkedIn, but they don't want to hear me on there. So I'm not really on social media. But apparently I have to be and do a lot more on it. So
the thing is, it's such a useful tool, right?
I learn a lot from it.
Yeah.
I definitely do. And am I at a point where I can educate? And I'm trying to get better. I'm like, I'm not good at this. Like, this is just technology of another form that I haven't quite mastered. So social media for me is that area. It's a real grey area.
Yeah. Do you know what, though? If you don't need it to market your business, I mean, I enjoy using it and I enjoy it for social reasons and stuff like that. But if it closed down tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, that's one less thing to do.
Yeah. And I get a lot of things in my DMs of, oh, look at this post. Why don't you post about it? And why don't you talk about it? And why don't you tell people that that's false information? I'm like, no, because that's a job in itself.
Yeah, I'm busy. Yeah.
I can't troll people's social media and be like, you can't say that. You can't do that. I was like, that's a full-time job.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I'm like, I definitely don't want to have to do that.
You don't have to. Other people are.
No, yeah. Oh, well, Sophie, it's been amazing speaking to you.
Aww.
I was so honoured and so excited when you said yes to me. I was like, oh, she's so busy, but she's got time to do this. So before we end, I am going to give you the opportunity to ask me any questions so our listeners can get to know both of us a bit better.
That's so nice. So I would love to know a bit more about how it works with your clinic in Harrods, who your kind of main clients are, what sorts of things you're picking up, and if they're like a very different clientele to people you've worked with before.
They're similar clientele. So I opened a clinic in Harrods. So we're essentially the dietitian sat as a brand in Harrods, or a concession in Harrods, which was amazing. I never thought in my wildest of dreams that I would have a clinic in such a prestigious place, which is so lovely. I already had an existing business where I looked after clients in the Middle East, and Middle East happens to be Harrods clientele. Sure. So it made sense for me to be there. And I was umming and ahhing over Harley Street and Harrods. Sure. So I had both the contracts. I had a place in Harley Street and I had a place in Harrods. And for me, Harrods worked because of their time and to be in a safe space and in an environment. And I feel like I still work with a team. So Harley Street felt very lonely. Yeah. Here I felt like actually I've got a beautiful front of house that helped me with all the admin. I've got really good managers that helped me with growing the business. So it made sense to go there. The clients would vary from celebrities to royalty and everything in between.
Oh, I'm surprised that people question why. I just think it's amazing that you're there. I think it's amazing that it's a dietitian that's there and not somebody else who's doing medical weight loss or whatever it might be. Like, I'm so happy and proud for you.
Exactly. I think any nutritionist could have taken that space with a big brand. Yeah. And, you know, that was another thing for me when they offered the position and the space. They were like, oh, you need to come in as a brand. And I'm like, really? So I had to immediately, get a branding specialist in.
But you're killing
and
doing it.
Get some branding, get something to look pretty. And they were like, well, what are you going to call yourself? And I'm like, I could call myself many things, but the thing that means the most to me in my career is my title of being a dietitian. Yeah. And I worked so hard for that. And it wasn't a seamless journey. It was actually, I look back at it now and I'm like, oh God, that should have given me some trauma. I failed numerous times and I got diagnosed with dyslexia as I did my final exams and I didn't pass them. So it wasn't straightforward, but the word, the dietitian, it means a lot to me and the profession. And this is why the Dietitian Bites podcast, the first series, is just for dietitians, because who else would I want to talk to apart from my own profession? So it was an amazing experience and I'm so glad that we're there, and I'm hoping that we can build that and have more dietitians come on board in that space and really make an amazing clinic. Yeah.
You need to put a junior dietitian in who can work under you, who does want to fly off and work on the private yacht.
It sounds so luxury and it sounds so beautiful, but actually it's quite a complicated and it is really serious. And when you're talking to people that obviously are spending quite a lot of money, they expect you to be there on call.
For sure.
And when I have people say it's an emergency, I'm like, definitely not one for the dietitian.
There's no such thing as dietitian's emergency.
You couldn't, unless, it was a peg concern or your energy or you needed an emergency protocol, it definitely cannot be an emergency in Harrods for me.
No, true.
Sophie, thank you for your
My
time.
pleasure.
Honestly, it really does mean a lot to have you on board, and I'm sure all the dietitians listening and also everyone that wants to know about gut health have learned a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the Dietitian Bites podcast. I hope you found the information we shared today valuable. To stay up to date with the latest episodes, please hit the subscribe or follow button so you never miss an episode. And if you have any comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you. For more personalised guidance on your health and nutrition journey, don't hesitate to book a 30-minute complimentary consultation through my website, thedietitian.com. And for daily inspiration and tips, follow me on social media at The Dietitian Global. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Dietitian Bites podcast.